Hi, I'm Erin from the Witch of Saturn. Welcome back to my channel. This is part 2 of my Witchy deck collection. So the first video went over some categories that I consider my Witchy decks to fall into, which was Basic Witch, Magical Witch, Lenormand, Pagan, and Goddesses. And now I'm back for part 2 to go over the decks in my Witchy collection that fall into the category of Sabbats and Cycles, Halloween Vibes, Day of the Dead and Ancestor decks, and the Dark Descent. So these are the Seasons of the Witch oracles. I have acquired all of them now, and I use these in a very specific way. I use them on my altar space that's in my closet to connect to the particular Sabbat or season. I am currently using the Samhain Oracle, so it's not present for me to go through, but it is, if you want to take a look at that one, it's in my tarot identity video, so you could check that out. This is the Mabon Oracle, which is very also, I mean, obviously they're all witchy, right? But this one has that autumnal, autumn vibe and fall color palette that's just so lovely and satisfying. So I'll use this just to remind me to connect into the particular time of year in working with that energy in my life. I'll either pull a single card or a spread. I try to do that every day. I don't always get around to it. And I think I saw Marlena, Teresa was using this for like a card of the week. And I really liked that. So maybe I will try that at some point. Next up in the same category of Sabbats and Cycles, I'm including Moonology Manifestation Oracle cards because I use these in the same way. I use these in a similar way. Use them in the same space on that altar to connect to the moon phase, the upcoming moon phase. So these cards go through a full moon in every sign, the last quarter moon through every sign, the new moon, and then the first quarter moon. So I will use this to track and to see, you know, like right now, we're at the first quarter moon in Capricorn as I'm making this video. So I've had this out on my altar saying, unleash your kindest self. And then I will switch this to the full moon in Aries that is coming up, cool your emotions. And so I just like this. I love the artwork. It's very, to me, there's nothing more witchy than working with the lunar cycles. There's just not. So this type of tracking system, I have a couple that I use in that altar space to track the moon and its phase, and then to connect to the Sabbat and the season. The next category that I have is Halloween Vibes, and this is very small part of my collection. The first Halloween deck that I have to show you is the Halloween Tarot in the little tin. This is a US Games by Kipling West, and this is just your basic RWS, but make it Halloween. I like the size of this. I like that it's in a tin and could travel with me. So this to me is just a fun one for this type of year. I know there are people who have so many Halloween themed decks in their collection. For me, I don't know how many of them I actually need. I want them all, to be honest with you, but I'm not sure which ones I'll end up bringing in permanently. I definitely would like to have the Hocus Pocus one. And I have heard that the guidebook for this in the full size is very good. So I don't know. I might have to dig deeper into that and check that out a little more fully. The next deck that's in my Halloween vibes is the Tarot of Vampires. Now this deck, and really this book, the guidebook, this is a crossover from Halloween to all year long deck because the guidebook is as good as everyone says that it is. The artwork is definitely giving straight up Halloween vibes with this amazing goth vampire art. I'm including this in 2 categories of my collection, which would be this overall Halloween vibe, but also dark descent. So I will bring this back out for that. The next category in my Witchy deck collection is Day of the Dead and Ancestor decks. So the first deck that I have is Tarot de los Muertos. This is by Knighton, and it is a very affordable indie deck. Honestly, I did buy it for that reason because it is on the affordable side. It's so pretty with the gold gilding. I love the backs on these cards. The artwork is great with these little skeletons. It's a pip deck. So the whole deck is skeletons. The quartz all have this reversal nature aspect to them. I want to get to the majors. So here we can see it's RWS, but make it skeletons. And this does fit. It does fit the Dia de los Muertos category for me, which is something that I've always been very drawn to and have a deep reverence for that culture and practice. I'll go back to this. I have not found a deck that really ticks all the boxes for what I'm looking for in this category. If you have any recommendations for that, aside from the obvious ones like the Los Scarabeo one that's out there, I don't know. I can't find exactly what I'm looking for when it comes to this deck, to this category, let's say. This deck in particular, though, I do want to just point out how amazing this card is, because this is the death card. So it's like, what does death look like for a skeleton? Well, it's rebirth. It's coming back into physical form. And I love that. I love that it's kind of like the death card if this deck were the upside down, right? If you watch Stranger Things, where it's just this alternate universe where the dead are living, what would death look like for them? It would look like coming back into our world of the living through being in the womb and being inside of a pregnant woman and being birthed. So I think that that's just brilliant. The other deck that I'm including in this Day of the Dead theme is the Tarot del Fuego. This is another deck that I bought because it was showing up in my dreams. And there is something about this with the artwork style and the fiery nature that I see myself working with this around the Day of the Dead. I can't really explain it any other way. I think that this reminds me of a time in my life when I was very connected to Day of the Dead symbolism and imagery, and I found a lot of artwork in this kind of particular style on a trip to Sedona and the Grand Canyon in Arizona, and I just really connect with this art, and it will have a place in my collection for my Day of the Dead practices. The next deck that I'm including in this category is a new acquisition, the Southern Gothic Oracle. I'm not sure exactly how this fits into my practice yet. but I bought it because I have a connection and an affinity to anything having to do with New Orleans. And as you can see here, like this mojo bag, there is a definite witchy quality to these cards that I think has a place in perhaps ancestor work or something to do with my connection to New Orleans and its witchy nature that has me put it here, like altar water. It's just a very, I'm not sure how it fits in yet, but something about it I really like. The crossroads, like there it is. It's definitely witchy. The next deck that I'm including in this section, which you're gonna be like, why is this in your witchy decks? And this is not what we signed up for, is the Yellow House Tarot by Heidi Dawn Nickerson. This is an indie deck, and in using this deck and connecting with it through Deck Connectors Club, I've found that this is a very strong ancestry deck for me. There's something about this home and antique type of aesthetic here that just it came out that way for me. I use it as an ancestor deck, so I had to include it here. I also think that it could be, I could be putting it into my witchy deck category because I know that Heidi identifies as a witch. She makes and wears these like really cute funky witch hats and says things like not all witches wear black, and so here we have it. The other deck that I'm putting into this category, kind of for unknown reasons, is Good Old Grandma. So that's my name for this deck. It is actually called Great Grandmother's Faded Frontier. This is a collage deck by Lennox Reese, and I am having an interesting experience working with this deck. The energy of Lennox's, I believe it's her grandmother, but could be her great grandmother, but one of her ancestors. These are their photographs. And I find there to be something very powerful about that comes through with this deck, that I'm planning to use it for more specific ancestor work as we get closer to Samhain and to the Day of the Dead and that portal being open, that I will, perhaps report back about. But for now, it's staying in this category. This first deck we've seen previously in the Halloween vibes, but for me, I definitely use this deck more for deeper emotional work than just to like, oh, this is a fun Halloween deck. Like, this is a fun Halloween deck. This is something different. This is something deeper. As I mentioned before, the guidebook to this is incredible. This deck could be like, deserves its own deep study. And so for me, it is definitely more in the category of decks for the descent. The next deck that I'm including in this category is the Moonchild Tarot, the Shadow Edition. There is definitely something deep and magical about this deck. It's just so gorgeous. It does not necessarily have, it's not a witchy aesthetic like something like this, right? But there is definitely something powerful and magical and witchy in this very ethereal and shadowy way that really speaks to me. And it's a deck that I can go to for some shadow work that also feels deeply emotionally supportive and gentle, or compassionate. there's something about it where it feels like a very safe space for me to kind of venture to those more hidden realms and parts of myself that are not so comfortable, in a way that still is very connected to the divine. So I just had to include this deck for that. Next up is the Mary L. Tarot. So as we see, this is Landscapes of the Abyss, and boy, does that come through. I think that, like the Tarot of Vampires, this deck is worth it for the guidebook alone, which does not have a huge introduction and yet really packs a powerful punch. I've just started working with this deck. We're doing a week with it for deck connectors, so stay tuned for that. But I am really liking it. But it is an intense deck. The artwork is intense. I don't love the artwork. I don't love the cardstock. I do love working with this deck so far. I am excited to continue building this relationship with it because it seems like it is very potent and powerful and evocative and provocative. There's parts of this deck that just the imagery is really intense and triggering. It's very raw and visceral, and I think that it is a deck that easily lends itself and is intended to take us deeper into the abyss and into the descent. The next deck for the descent, I think, appears in everyone's category for this type of decks for the descent, if they have it in their collection, is Ritual Tarot by Tierra May. Just to backtrack, so this was an indie deck but is now out of print. It's hard to find at a reasonable price. But if it's something that you want to dig deep into the guidebook and study these cards, I think would be a worthwhile investment. This is also an indie deck that is now available again after having not been available for a very long time, so you could jump on that if you wanted to. Mary L is a mass market deck. I did hear a rumor that it might go out of print. Who knows if that is true or not, but right now this one is available on Amazon. Ritual Tarot is an indie deck. I know that there is a new Kickstarter coming for this one, so if you're interested in it, you would want to check that out. And so there's something about this deck and the collage style and the art of Tierra May that is definitely very witchy, and also I think lends itself to working with the descent, with going deeper into the shadow, with exploring more of your subconscious and what is beneath the surface. I think that the style of collage where things are a little bit broken up again, it does give me that same kind of, it evokes that same energy in me as Lacrimosa, where because things are a little disjointed, it feels otherworldly to me for some reason, or dreamlike. I enjoy working with this deck at night, like around midnight is when I usually will work with it, if I'm up and doing, you know, up as one does at midnight. Like, let me explore the depths of my mind with Ritual Tarot in the dark. Like, why am I like this? But here we go. This is a beautiful deck, and I think that it does a good job of being witchy and allowing you to kind of go into your own darkness in a way that's not super scary. Like at first I was a little afraid of this deck, and I don't usually have that response to tarot, but I was just a healthy respect for working with this deck. I don't take it lightly. Let's just say that. But it doesn't give me the same kind of like dark look in the face of your own fears vibe as this next one. Cave of Sybil, also by Tierra May, is definitely what I would consider the deepest, darkest deck in my collection. The artwork in this deck is jarring. It is intense. It looks very depths of the underworld, right? Where we just have like body parts in the wrong places, and this, looks like a spine has been removed. This deck definitely has some intentionally dark imagery that is, it's the Cave of Sybil. A Sybil is a witch, and we see this kind of dark underworldly cave of ritual and spell work and decay and birth and death and life cycles and roots and being buried deep in the earth. I mean, it is an intense deck that is not for everyone, not for every reading. I think it does, like I said, with Ritual Tarot, there's a certain healthy level of respect that I approach this deck with, where I'm being very intentional with the way that I work with it. Even the names on the cards, which are on the back: Conqueror, Outcast, Cunning, Gather, Law, Skinwalker, Masked, Harlot, Other, Communion. These are not light words, and I really enjoy having this in my collection, having a place for this type of work. And I'm ending with this deck because I do think that it is I think that it's the most intense. Thank you so much for watching. That concludes my very big and very long witchy deck collection. I appreciate you watching. Please like and subscribe, and I would love to hear from you. I would love to hear which witchy decks you have in your collection, which ones you think I should add to mine, which ones you think are in mine that don't really fit that category. Like, I literally love to just talk about tarot. So please talk about tarot with me. Have a great day, and I will talk to you soon.